I got cut from my mom's birthday celebration because, apparently, I didn't look presentable standing next to my sister's new boyfriend. Funny twist? The guy turned out to be my employee. Yep, I was actually his boss. But that didn't stop him from looking me straight in the eyes and saying, "If you're still planning to come home, don't bother calling me your father." 3 weeks later, on the day of my mom's birthday, their house lost power, the water got shut off, and the internet went down all at once. Stick with me. Maybe you'll see a bit of yourself in this story. My name's Jacob. I'm 30 and I live in a small town about 40 minutes outside of Seattle. Every morning, I fix myself a coffee, check the weather forecast, and take a short drive, less than 10 minutes, to the office. I helped start a modest tech company that focuses on clean energy solutions. A lot of people, especially my own family, don't fully understand what I do. Some still assume I spend my days turning wrenches and fixing broken equipment. I don't bother correcting them. I never saw the point. Whenever someone asks me about my folks or my sister Laura, I just give a little smile. "We haven't talked in a while," I usually say. That's all. Not trying to hide anything, I just don't feel the need to rehash it anymore. Truth is, I haven't reached out to them in over 2 years. No phone calls, no texts, no cards on holidays or birthdays. Nothing. Just radio silence, like the line between us snapped one day and nobody tried tying it back together. There was a time I believed family came before anything else. But that belief got kicked out the door 2 years ago, right around my mom's birthday. I remember it clearly. It was 3 weeks before her birthday and I had just wrapped up a vacation booking and cleared my schedule at work. Nothing fancy. Just planned to head home a little early, stay a few days, and help out with the usual prep like I did every year. Wanted to give them a heads up. So I picked up the phone and called my mom. But my dad picked up instead just after 2 rings. "I'll be home 2 days early," I told him casually. "Let me know if you need anything picked up or taken care of before the party." At first, he responded kind of vaguely. Then there was this weird pause. When he spoke again, his voice had this heavy edge to it, like he was tiptoeing around something he didn't want to say out loud. "Jacob, maybe it's better if you don't come home this year." At the time, I just thought he was trying to be considerate of my work schedule. "No worries, Dad," I replied, coffee mug still warm in my hand. "Everything's set. I've got the time." That silence came back, but longer this time. Then he dropped it, firmer, colder. "Laura's bringing her boyfriend this year. He's a manager. Smart, well-spoken, sharp dresser. And your line of work, well, it's not something we like to bring up. It'd be better if you stayed away." That hit me like a slap. I felt the heat crawl up my neck. My heart started pounding and I gripped my coffee mug tighter. "Are you serious right now?" I asked, barely keeping it together. "Did you actually just say that?" He didn't take it back. Didn't try to soften the blow. He just said it straight, like it was no big deal. "Having you here would be an embarrassment. If you still plan on showing up, then don't call me your father." And just like that, he hung up. No hesitation. I put the phone down slowly, my hands still damp with sweat. Everything around me went quiet, no background noise, no TV, no footsteps. Just me standing in the middle of my apartment, staring blankly like the air had been sucked out of the room. His words replayed in my head on a loop like a voice message that wouldn't stop. "Having you here would be an embarrassment. If you still plan on showing up, then don't call me your father." For a second, I wondered if I'd heard him wrong. But no, every word was deliberate. There wasn't a single crack in his tone. No mistake. No wiggle room for misunderstanding. I clenched my teeth. My throat tightened like something hard had wedged itself in there and refused to budge. Then something clicked. Memories came flooding back. For over 2 years, I'd been quietly covering all of their household bills, electricity, water, internet, like clockwork. Every month. Never missed. No one ever brought it up, not even once. But now I was the one they were ashamed of? I grabbed my phone again, still trembling a little, though my head was starting to clear. Opened my banking app, scrolled through the transaction history. All I wanted was a number. Just a total of what I'd paid for them over the past couple of years, utility bills, internet, all of it. Every payment scheduled pulled directly from my account. Month after month, the average came to around $400. And then I saw it, the total $9,842.17. I stared at that number for a while. Not out of shock, but because something inside me just stopped. Not sadness. Not even anger. Just this weird emptiness, like a space where something used to be. Almost 10 grand. And they think I'm the embarrassment. As I scrolled through all those transactions, a quiet thought surfaced, one that had never really occurred to me until then. Has Laura ever done anything like this for them? It wasn't jealousy. I wasn't chasing recognition or some gold star. I just genuinely wondered if they consider me the family's disgrace. Who exactly are they comparing me to? I'd covered nearly $10,000 of their living costs behind the scenes without asking for a thank you or a dime in return. What about her? Has she ever had to sacrifice anything? Has she ever struggled or given up something to help out? Or did she just show up looking nice in a pretty dress, hanging off the arm of a man they could show off? I wasn't keeping score. I just started realizing, maybe for the first time, that fair never really existed in our house. Ever since I was a kid, I was used to being pushed to the sidelines. In family photos, I was usually half-blocked by someone else or stuck near the edge of the frame, rarely looking at the camera. No one told me to step aside. I just always did. Laura was always front and center at every major family moment, birthdays, graduations, even her heartbreaks somehow turned into family-wide events. There was always something going on that pulled everyone together around her. Consolation, celebration, she got it all. Meanwhile, I honestly can't remember the last time anyone in that house looked me in the eye and simply asked, "Hey, are you doing okay?" She's 2 years older than me, but the real difference between us was never about age. Laura was the one they pinned their hopes on, the golden child they bragged about whenever company came around. And me? If I was brought up in those same conversations, it was barely a blip. Jacob? Oh, he's doing fine. Something in tech, I think. That's what I got. A vague mention and then right back to talking about her. For a long time, I thought that if I just worked hard, stayed out of trouble, and quietly took care of things, maybe they'd finally notice. Maybe I'd earn some space in the spotlight too. But they didn't. And I finally figured out that when people are used to not seeing you, they don't notice when you're gone. I started paying their utility bills, water, power, internet close to 2 years ago. It all started with a phone call from my mom. That day she sighed a lot. Complained about how everything was getting more expensive, the electric bill had spiked, groceries weren't cheap, and their retirement funds were stretched thin. Then, after a pause, she said real soft and tentative, "If you could help out a little, it would mean the world." I told her I'd take care of it. Back then, I figured it was temporary, just a few months until they caught up. But the months rolled on and nothing changed. Each one looked exactly like the one before. No one ever said when it would end. No alternate plan ever showed up. Once in a while, I'd ask, "Is Laura helping out at all, Mom?" And every time she'd dodge the question. Sometimes she'd say, "Just help us this month. Your sister will chip in next time." Other times it was, "Laura's dealing with your dad's medical stuff. That's a lot for her." She said those things so often I could have repeated them word for word in my sleep. But I knew better. None of it was true. And still, I didn't push. I just kept making the payments, nearly $400 each month. On time. Quietly. Without ever complaining. Nobody brought it up. It wasn't that I didn't care. I did. I just thought helping them was the right thing to do. I thought maybe if I kept doing the right thing, someone might finally see me. But now, after everything, I'm the one they point at and say he's the disappointment. He's the family shame. I remember sitting there that day, my phone still in my hand, just sunk into the couch. The room was still. I wasn't mad anymore. I wasn't even hurt. What I felt, plain and clear, was the steady voice in my chest that said, "That's enough." So I opened the banking app again. Scrolled straight down to the auto-pay section where I had all their bills lined up, electric, water, internet, taken care of month after month. And then I went through them, one by one, and canceled each one. No drama. No anger. Just a quiet kind of decision, the kind you make when you're trying to hold onto what little self-respect you've got left. That's all I had at that point, a shred of dignity they hadn't taken from me yet. About a week passed before I heard anything. My mom messaged first, using that same gentle tone she always did, like nothing had happened. There was no apology. No mention of what had gone down. Just this. "I just got a notice about the internet bill. Can you take care of it?" I stared at her message for a bit, then set the phone down without typing a word. Not out of spite. Not to make a statement. But because her first instinct wasn't to ask if I was okay. She didn't say, "Can we talk?" or "We miss you." Nothing like that. Just a request. Pay the bill. So I said nothing. And that silence, to me, said everything I needed to say. Couple weeks later, my dad tried calling. I let it ring. He didn't try twice. Just left a voicemail. He sounded just like he always had, cold, clipped, impatient. The power company called. "This month's bill hasn't been paid. What's going on?" There was no concern in his voice. No mention of what he'd said to me on the phone weeks earlier. No hint of regret. Just another demand. I listened to the message, let it play out, then hit the screen off and placed the phone face down on the table. And that was it. I stayed silent. I didn't budge. Then my mother's birthday rolled around, 3 weeks after that phone call when my father told me not to bother coming home. The party still happened, of course, her favorite roast chicken, cake from that bakery she likes. A handful of close family gathered around the dinner table. Everyone showed up. Everyone but me. That afternoon, right at 4 p.m., I was sitting in my living room. Cup of coffee on the table, long since gone cold. My phone lit up. My mom was calling. I stared at her name for a second, then put the phone down without answering. No second thoughts. No hesitation. My dad called a few minutes later. Then Laura. 3 calls back to back. I didn't answer a single one. I didn't feel curious. Didn't wonder what they wanted. I just leaned back in my chair and kept my eyes on the window. Outside, the sky was dull and gray. Not raining. Just cold in that quiet, creeping way that tells you winter's waiting right outside your door. Then the messages started rolling in. The first was from Mom. Jacob, the power's been shut off. The whole house is dark. Can you please pay the bill? I read it without reacting. There was no fire inside me. No shock. No outrage. Just a quiet sort of emptiness that had gotten real familiar by then. The kind of emptiness that comes when you've spent years carrying the weight for everyone else, and no one ever thought to ask how heavy it was. Then came one from my dad. No water. We can't cook. Get it handled now. Right after that, Laura chimed in. Internet's down. Guests are arriving. Please fix this ASAP. I glanced at the clock. It was 5:12 p.m. I remembered it all clearly. I had canceled those automatic payments exactly 3 weeks earlier. Right after my father told me that if I still planned on showing up for Mom's birthday, I shouldn't call him Dad anymore. And now, in the middle of the celebration I'd been specifically told to stay away from, everything started falling apart. The power cut out. Then the water. Then the internet. Each one disappeared right when they needed it most. I didn't text. Didn't call. I didn't feel like I owed them an explanation. Instead, I sat there quietly, slowly turning my cold coffee cup in my hands, eyes locked on the window like I was looking far beyond anything outside. Past the fog, past the trees, past all of it. And in that still moment, it hit me. They weren't reaching out because they missed me. They were calling because they had no one else to carry the weight. Around 6 o'clock, the phone started buzzing again. But it wasn't Mom, Dad, or Laura this time. It was the extended family. The ones who only show up on holidays but still feel like they've earned the right to scold you. Messages started rolling in like a tide. One after the other. Some called me ungrateful. Someone even wrote, "You humiliated your mother in front of everyone." Another, not quite as loud but just as biting, said, "Laura was right. People like you don't belong at family celebrations." I read every one of them. Didn't reply to a single one. Not because silence meant they were right, but because I'd finally grown tired of trying to justify myself to people who always chose noise over truth. I was just about to set the phone down when the screen lit up again. This time with a familiar name. Aunt Jerry. She was the only one in the whole family who still genuinely believed in me. She was calling on some old video app that only she and I ever bothered using. We kept it around because we were the only ones who still cared to look each other in the eye when it counted. I hesitated a second, then picked up on the second ring. Her face appeared, softly lit from behind by the warm yellow glow of her kitchen. A space I knew as well as my own. I could picture every crack in the tile, every drawer that didn't quite close right. But something about it felt different tonight. There were quiet clinks of forks and knives, uneasy laughter, and the low hum of awkward conversations happening in the background. She looked into the screen with eyes that were kind and worried. "You're really not gonna pay it, Jacob?" she asked gently, like she wasn't sure what she was stepping into. I met her gaze, and when I finally spoke, my voice came out slow, like I was digging up something I'd buried a long time ago. "It was Dad," I said. "He told me not to come." I swallowed hard. He said if I insisted on showing up, I shouldn't call him my father anymore. Her face dropped, the warmth in her eyes darkening into something more serious. She didn't speak right away, just looked over her shoulder, and suddenly the room behind her exploded into chaos. I heard my mom's voice rise through the noise. Tell him I'm ashamed. On today of all days, how could he do this to us? Then Dad, loud and sharp as ever. It's not that serious. It's just a couple bills. What kind of man holds a grudge over money? Then my uncle, throwing in his opinion like always. Poor Laura, having to deal with a brother like that. I could hear footsteps getting closer to the screen. And then Laura stepped into frame, arms crossed, face pinched with annoyance. He even answered? Seriously? Mom's been crying all day. Does he even care? No shame at all. Still, I said nothing. I just watched. Silence was the only defense I had left. I was about to hit the end button when, out of nowhere, another face appeared on the screen, just off to the side. A young guy in a dark suit, hair neatly parted like he'd rehearsed it. He looked at me with this puzzled expression, then offered a cautious smile. Hey, boss, he said, his voice unsure, like he wasn't quite certain if this was the right thing to say. My heart stopped for half a second. I instinctively pulled the phone closer to get a better look. I hadn't seen this coming. Not here. Not tonight. On the same night, I was labeled too much of a disgrace to be invited. I stared at him, trying to place the face. And then it hit me, the tone, the way he addressed me. Of course. He was one of the new hires from our southern office. We'd exchanged a couple of emails. He'd sent over some reports. Polite guy, efficient. But I hadn't known he was that guy, Laura's boyfriend. The one they were all so desperate to impress. I noticed Aunt Jerry glance behind her. The kitchen had gone stone quiet. Then, from somewhere in the room, someone whispered. Wait, what did he just call Jacob? Another voice followed, confused and a little panicked. Boss? As in, Jacob's the guy Laura's boyfriend works for? You could feel the confusion ripple through the room like a wave. And me? I didn't flinch. Didn't correct them. I just sat there, waiting. Then the young man stood up a little straighter, glanced behind the camera at everyone else, and said clearly. For the record, I work at Pacific Terry Tech. Mr. Jacobs, one of the co-founders. His voice cut clean through the noise, calm and firm. And suddenly, the room fell dead silent. Not awkward. Just stunned. I didn't say a word. Just gave a small nod, enough to confirm it. He turned back to the camera, his eyes still wide, unsure. And I said, quiet, steady, like the words had been sitting in my chest for years. Hope your big introduction's going well. Then I ended the call. That night, I slept like a rock. No waking up in the middle of the night. No spinning thoughts. No lingering doubt. For the first time in what felt like forever, I felt light. Not because I'd proven anything, but because, finally, they saw me for who I really was. The next morning, before the sun had fully crept through the blinds, I picked up my phone to check emails like I always do. There were a couple meeting alerts. A few notes from accounting. And then I saw a name I didn't recognize in the sender line, Eric. I opened the email. Right there in the first line, it caught me off guard. I'm sorry. I had no idea you were Laura's brother. I've always respected you at the company. I raised an eyebrow, shifted into the pillow behind me, and kept reading. Eric explained how genuinely surprised he was to find out that Laura and I were related. Then, no dancing around it, no sugarcoating, he wrote. I didn't expect her to be like that. I'm ending the relationship. And thank you for not putting me on the spot in front of everyone. I laid the phone flat against my chest and closed my eyes for a second. It took me a few minutes to open the inbox again. When I did, I started typing slowly, carefully, nothing fancy, just straight to the point. Eric, that's your decision to make. I don't expect anyone to make choices just to stay in my good books. Think it through before you act. And for what it's worth, I don't bring family into the workplace. I hit send. That was it. No more thought. No hard feelings. I'd said what needed saying. Some things, once made clear, don't need to be carried any further. Around 10 o'clock that morning, just as I was wrapping up a meeting with department heads and scribbling a few last notes, my phone buzzed in my pocket. I glanced at the screen. It was Laura. I let it ring for a bit before tapping decline. Not out of spite. Not to prove a point. Just because I'd finally run out of room for apologies that only show up after everything's broken. 5 minutes later, a message appeared. I'm sorry. I didn't think Eric would react like that. You're his boss. If you said something, I'm sure he'd listen. Please, talk to him. Ask him to come back. I stood up, walked to the hallway window, and leaned against the frame. Read the message again. Then again. And finally, I typed out a reply, clear, measured, and impossible to misread. Eric didn't walk away because of anything I said. He left because of how you treat people. How you look down on what you don't understand. How you assume that saying things softly is the same as making things right. I hit send, slid the phone back into my pocket, and went back to my desk. Less than a minute later, it buzzed again. I know I messed up. This time I mean it. I'll change. Please believe me. Just this once. I read it, sat with it for a bit, and felt nothing. Not because I didn't care, but because I finally got it. Sometimes the real distance between people isn't in the apology. It's in the timing of it. I quietly deleted the message and returned to the life I was building, the one that didn't orbit around their needs anymore. A week passed. Friday afternoon. I had just walked in from the garage, keys still in hand, when I stopped cold on the porch. There they were. My parents. Standing at my front door, each with a small suitcase, both looking worn down from the road. I didn't ask why they were there. Didn't need to. It wasn't a casual visit. I opened the door and let them in. No edge in my voice. No bitterness. Just a simple decision. I wasn't going to have that conversation outside in the cold wind. We sat down in the living room. The tea I'd made earlier was still warm on the table. My dad spoke first. His voice was quieter than usual. He apologized. My mom followed, saying they'd had time to think. Maybe they'd gone too far. Maybe it never should have come to this. I said nothing. Just listened. I wasn't waiting for a dramatic apology. I was trying to see whether this was an ending or a new beginning. Then, just as I figured, the tone shifted. My dad leaned forward a little, looked straight at me. We're family, Jacob. Families help each other. We raised you. We got you through school. A piece of what you've got now, that came from us, didn't it? I looked at him without flinching. My body stayed still, but I sat up straighter. Then Mom chimed in, voice low, as if what she was saying made perfect, logical sense. If you could maybe send us around $2,000 a month, just a little support. It's not a lot for someone like you. I stared at them. The same people who once disinvited me from a birthday party because they thought I wasn't presentable enough. Now they were here, sitting in my home, assigning a dollar amount to their apology. $2,000 a month. Because I was their son. And in their eyes, that made my success a debt I was supposed to repay. I let out a small laugh, not loud or bitter. The kind of chuckle you give when something just doesn't add up. They looked right at me, waiting for me to agree like the answer was obvious. But I wasn't angry. I'd moved beyond that. I leaned back a bit, met their gaze, and said calmly, "What about Laura? What will she be contributing each month?" You could feel the air in the room tighten. Dad gave Mom a look. She answered softly, almost shrinking into the words. "Your sister's job situation, it's still unstable. And the breakup with Eric hit her hard." I nodded. Of course. Same old script, just dressed up with a gentler tone. I looked at them both and said, "If she agrees to send you $2,000 a month, I'll do the same. No more. No less." They didn't answer. Just sat there, watching me, trying to figure out if I was serious. I kept going, voice steady. "Or, if you expect me to carry the whole thing, I'll need it in writing, a formal agreement that says when you're both gone, the house becomes mine outright." I didn't say another word after that. No need to push. No extra explanations. I just sat still, letting the silence do what it does best, reveal what people really feel when they're finally not in control. For the first time, I'd drawn a line. Set my own terms. And the weight of that change hit the room like a cold draft. As soon as I finished speaking, the air thickened. Heavy. Tense. Then, without warning, my father shot up from his chair. He slammed his palm down onto the table, hard enough to tip the teacup and send warm liquid running down the edge onto the floor. His voice exploded, bouncing off the walls. His chest heaved with fury. "You're setting conditions for your own parents? We raised you for over 20 years and now you're counting pennies like some stranger? What kind of life are you living, huh?" He was shouting so loud I wouldn't have been surprised if the neighbors paused their dinner to listen in. I didn't move. Didn't flinch. I just sat there, hands resting calmly on the arms of the chair, my eyes locked on him. Not harsh. But no longer soft either. I let him finish. Then I stood up slowly, deliberately. And in a steady voice, quiet but sharp enough to cut through the chaos, I said, "I think it's time you both left my house." It wasn't a threat. I wasn't yelling. It was just the final word from someone who had reached the outer edge of respect. No one replied. No more raised voices. No drama. Just the slow scrape of suitcases being pulled across the hardwood and the soft click of the door shutting behind them, quieter than all the noise they'd left behind inside me. It's been 2 years since that moment. Since they last stood in this home. I didn't block their numbers. Didn't change my email. I didn't sever ties. I just stopped calling. And waited. I waited to see if they would still treat me like family now that I wasn't the one holding everything together. But in 2 years, not a single message came. No birthday wishes. No, "How are you?" Not even a casual check-in. I used to tell myself they might change. That eventually something would click and they'd come around. But here's what I've learned. Some people don't change, especially when they've never had to admit they were wrong. So I kept living, working, drinking coffee in the morning, going for walks, building a life that didn't revolve around guilt or obligation. And the only real difference? I stopped being their emotional ATM, always available, always generous, always quietly hurting. If there's one truth I've pulled from all of this, it's this. Family isn't supposed to be a place where people guilt you into kindness and then call it love. A real family values you, not what you provide. Not your money. Not your usefulness in a crisis. Not whether you make them look good. They value you. And now, before I close this chapter, I want to ask something just once, honestly. Was I wrong? Was it wrong of me to say no? To walk away instead of handing over $2,000 a month just because they raised me? I used to believe family could fix anything. But after being made to feel like an outsider in my own childhood home, time and time again, I finally stood up and broke the pattern. Was that heartless? Or was that me finally learning to value myself or right when I needed to? I'd really like to know what you think. Drop a comment below. Whether you agree or disagree, I want to hear it. And if this story struck something in you, go ahead and subscribe. It helps support the channel, and trust me, there are a lot more real-life stories like this still waiting to be told. Thanks for staying with me to the end. Truly, take care of yourself. And I'll see you in the next one. If you haven't subscribed yet, go ahead and hit that button, and don't forget to tap the bell so you don't miss the next story.